like I told her, I said, I call it the dark side of Oconto County. First up, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Maybe it's haunted now, but it wasn't back then when it happened. But a lot of the research I do, I go a lot of rabbit trails, so I'm looking at these old newspapers. I've looked at enough newspapers from the 1900s that I can tell you I've seen that paper before when I look at it. And I'm always sidetracked. I'll tell my wife, hey, look, did you know that so-and-so just had their 17th child and weighed 25 pounds? She says, well, who's that? Nobody I know, but I just read it in the article. I don't normally look up oddities. One case I looked up, when I bought my house, they told me that a 16-year-old had burnt to death in the backyard, caught on fire burning garbage. And I looked and looked and looked. I finally just gave up. I thought it was just a rumor. Years later, I'm doing research on the names of the streets in Oconto, and there it is. Sure enough, she did burn to death. There's another one, I think. Yeah, right here. Thanks. There's another story that's told of a boy in Oconto Falls who decided to go sledding. And he had this great idea. They lived in one of the storefronts. If you pack the steps full of snow, you can slide down really good. I don't know how many times he made it down, but the last time he went underneath the car. I have yet to find any written information on that. But I've talked to a lot of people that can tell me it happened. So sometimes it's, and it makes me kind of wonder, because if you look here, this is a picture of Oconto Falls. They got one of the best ski hills ever. I'm not sure why, they would have to make their own. If you can't tell, they're coming down the hill. It's a block-long hill. It's called Company Hill. The train's sitting there, and they don't seem to care. And I'm sure that wasn't the only time they've ever did that back then. I think there's a whole lot of stories there that would be interesting to find out. So, Oconto County's had its normal, it's the fires, the floods, crime, like any other place. So here's a few pictures, just some of the flood. If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit down. I broke my leg a couple months ago, and it still doesn't like me standing on it. So I apologize for that. If you get in a fight with a tree, you'll lose. Anybody familiar with Oconto? This is Pecor Street, over behind the police department in that area. We'll talk a little bit more about floods and all that here. That's Chicago Street, so it'd be right before St. Peter's, or St. Peter's Church if you're coming down the highway there. Okay, this here is the armory. This one burnt down. I got that written down here. In 1927, it was the second armory of the same spot. A third armory was put there too, and then that was torn down. I want to say not too many years back, but probably 25 years back, where the police department is now. And this, did I miss the? I did miss the courthouse. That's the courthouse fire, and that was in 1871. If you look really close, you maybe have to trust me on. Let me get on this side. In the other pictures, you'll see a pumper hauled by horses. There is a ladder coming up, and one man standing up on the tip of that roof putting out this fire. The guy's a hero in my. I'm impressed. He's sitting on a building that's on fire. He's up there working. And there are other pictures of churches like that too, where they shimmied up that ladder and kept on going. And now let's get back to flood of 1865, 1866, and this comes from an article I found. It was written by some of my ancestors, my great-grandpa, I believe. It would be John and Anna Merline. They moved to Oconto in 1861. They first experienced a flood in 1865. That was the first flood they experienced. John stated that while living in the two-story building on Superior Street, and it's across from the gents' clothing store, but I have no idea where that is, so I'm sure most of you don't either. But people would stand on the sidewalk and spear fish on the main street during the flood. A footbridge was made across Main Street, and they would all sit there and watch because people kept on falling off this footbridge into the water. They thought it was kind of cute. They said, wasn't uncommon to see 5 or 6 people fall off the bridge into the water. Cousins of mine, Casper and George Merline, who attended Washington School, they had to be taken across the river by some river divers who put them in a boat and bring them so they could go to school. They kept it up. So that's one of the floods. We've had a few of them. This is one of the sadder ones here. Pensacola tornado. July 7th, 1877. The southbound train was heading from left Oconto, was heading to Pensacola, going towards Green Bay. As he got there, he was flagged down. The train was flagged down. We'll talk about that in a little while here. And realized there was something up. And either he backed up or turned around. I'm not sure. I think he backed up all the way back to Oconto. But they said that he just kept on blowing the horn all the way back to Oconto. By the time they got to Oconto, they were met at the depot by doctors, nurses, and anybody else that was willing to help. They didn't know the problem, but they knew they needed help. And I've read stuff like that when the Pescigo fired. The mayor got a special train from Oconto to go to Pescigo. Everybody was waiting, wanting to help. The tornado started in Coulardtown, or now Coulardville, which is about 4 miles away. The wind, when the tornado first started, it picked up a little boy by the last name of Glenn. They say it lifted him 25 feet in the air and threw him out into a rye field. They said he was unhurt, but rather scared. The southeasterly wind hit the little village of Pensacola. The water was lifted out of the river, and the railroad bridge was moved. Now we talked about they being flagged down because the train wouldn't have made it through. The Pat McGovern house was facing east before the tornado. It was now facing west after the tornado. Mr. McGovern was the first, side note, he was the first person at the Herman Barngardener's Tavern. The guy was murdered. He happened to be the first one there. And I'm going to mention that because that name comes up a few more times. The bar wasn't at the same time, but the wife heard some noise in the bar, walked in, and watched the guys killing her husband. She went up for help, and this Herman was the first one Mr. McGovern was the first one there. The F.G. Gardner Hotel, at that time, was a $100,000 building. I can only imagine what it'd be now. Was totally destroyed. A 4,000-pound safe the 4,000-pound safe was thrown to the window and carried 25 feet through the air, or it hit the ground. The sawmill, the planing mill, the boarding house, the school, the depot, and 25 other barns and dwellings were all destroyed. A sewing machine was ripped out of one of the houses and thrown through a cow. The people killed was Louis Zanto and his 3-month-old son. Mrs. Kell's baby was torn from her arms, lifted high into the air, and was never found. Now Pensaki, if you know where Pensaki is, it's right on the water, I'm sure that's where the child was. Eugene Chesley and child were killed. Jamie Anna Farley, which was a baby, was carried high into the air and dropped and pushed under one of the sidewalks when she hit the ground in the forest. Another baby, Robert Letourneau, was killed. And then 9-year-old Herman Bargardner was also killed. Now that last name, that's the same name as the guy that was murdered in the tavern. So now the father was killed. This one, now the 9-year-old gets killed in a tornado. And years later, the mother went to a picnic in Oconto by way of boat. On the way back, she drowned. So that's the 3 of them. This couple right here, celebrating their wedding anniversary. When this young lady right here was very young, she was the one that seen the bridge get ripped out of the river and ran ahead to stop the train and saved everybody on that train from the tornado, or from landing into the water. Flood of 1880. This flood, they knew was going to happen. They knew the amount of rain was hitting up north. They were well prepared, they thought. Starting at 1 o'clock on Saturday, the rain came in torrents for several hours. Main Street from the Christian Science Church to the music hall was underwater 3 to 4 feet deep. Trains from the north, so any train that was coming from Marinette would stop at Oconto on the north side. People would get out, get into wagons or walk, bypass Oconto, walk way to the east side of Oconto, cross the bridge where the hospital is, walk back down McDonald Street where they met another train that was waiting from the rest of the way south to go to Green Bay. So it was big. And I like the last line here. You can almost imagine Oconto as an ancient city of Venice. I liked how they put things in the newspaper back then. There's a few articles, things we're going to see here. Now the next one, it's a little bit newer, 1969, and I just like this story. I think it's interesting. There was a group of juveniles that were captured in Stiles. They were robbing cottages, in houses, and they were taken into custody and sent back. They came from Milwaukee. 2 weeks later, the police were called. Milwaukee Police Department called up Oconto, and says a group of juveniles believed to be part of the first group that you caught 2 weeks ago had stole the 1969 Oldsmobile from Milwaukee, and they're believed to be in Oconto County. Can you go and look for them? So back out there, they go looking for these juveniles. On Tuesday, the first juvenile was caught. He was in a trailer in the Michigan Forest, so they captured him. Later on that day, they found the car in about the same area, and the car was towed to Jack's Auto Salvage in Brookside. On Wednesday, 24 hours later, a second juvenile was found in the same area. Well, the cops asked him, "Where's your partner?" And he says, "Well, how are the 4 that you caught doing?" He says, "Well, what do you mean the 4 we caught? We only caught 1. No, they were hiding on you. You didn't catch them." So off to the junkyard they go. Opened up the trunk, and sure enough, right. 2 boys and a girl, teenagers, were in the trunk. They all seemed to be okay. So I I don't recommend this if you're hiding from the cops. Don't hide in the trunk of your car. I just don't. On Thursday, the last 3 were found. They were sitting under a tree eating chips that they had bought at the local store down there. 3 out of the 8 were the original ones they captured the week before, or 2 weeks before. I just like that there. Go hide in the trunk of your car. So this one here is just kind of like Paul Harvey. This is the house in Oconto. It's 321 2nd Street. Now this house was built, maybe one of the oldest houses in Oconto. It was moved 3 times. The guy built it by the hospital. He then moved it down the road a bit and opened up a tavern and store where he had the house, and then later on moved it to where it is now. The first time I did this thing, my daughter was listening, and I could hear her talking. Why are you talking? My friend owned that house for a while, so she thought that's pretty cool. But the guy that built this house also built the first courthouse. He built the first bridge in Oconto. He built most of the south side, and that was 1856 when he come to our area. So anyway, the lady's in this house here, and she hears this noise, pounding on the door and some bellowing. Opening up the door, she seen this Indian, whose name was Ascanona, U-S-C-A-N-O-N-A. He'll change his name in a little while, we'll see why. He was bleeding terribly. He had both hands over his face, blood rolling down, and he's looking for help. He was asking for a ray to stop the blood. Now, the lady was probably, will never forget. This is the more current picture of the house. What she's seen, because when she removed his hands, his nose had been bitten off. So this is the story of Pat's Nose, a well-known man. Different articles I've read on him. He traveled all over the place. So, like I said, Ascanona, they said he was a handsome young buck. No one in the whole tribe was more fleet-footed than him. He rivaled the seniors in mental accomplishments. He was the envy of all the young men of the tribe. Many of the young Indian maidens, and also the white women, were after him. The older women wanted him to be the son-in-law. The younger women wanted him to be the husband. And one day they woke up on the tribe and there was no smoke coming out of his hut. And they thought that was rather odd. Well, after a couple days, nothing, they kept on searching for him. And after a couple months, they just gave up. They didn't know what happened to him. A few months later, he came back home. But he was holding hands with his new wife from a distant tribe. It didn't go good. The girls from the tribe had nothing to do with his new wife. It didn't bother her none, but it sure bothered, I'm going to go with Pat's Nose. That's the easier name for me to remember. He didn't like it. He liked being all oohed out all the time. He liked the girls chasing him. He didn't like it. And after a time, he went back to his old ways and started after the young maidens. So here the Pat's Nose, the beginning. Well, how he became Pat's Nose, how he got his nose bitten off. I put down here the squaws loved him or they hated him. I'm not quite sure what it was. Now there's 4 different articles I've read on how Pat's Nose became Pat's Nose. You get today choose which one you want to choose. The first one, very simple. He went to bed, and when he was sleeping, most likely drunk, his wife came in and bit off his nose. It all has something to do with this one, just so you know. The second thing I found a little bit more gruesome. Him and his wife were in happy spirits, and they were getting too friendly with two Indian maidens. At this time, they would have been along the Oconto River by the hospital. The wives happened to be coming down the river in a canoe. And when they seen this, they pulled it to the side of the water. First wife got out. She snuck up on her husband, hit him with a paddle, smashing his face and killing him. The article said that there was no reports of law going after him because they believed that she was justified in what she did. Then it goes on to say, now Patrono's wife had a different way of taking care of the problem. She came up, put her arms around him, as if she was asking forgiveness or giving him forgiveness, and bit off his nose. The third article I found says he was caught making hanky-panky with his fair maiden Indian during a drinking spree. His wife had an ingenious way to keep him from straying from the wigwam. She placed her arms around him and bit off his nose. And there's one more. This one is a letter that he wrote himself. And at the end, I'll read the letter. It's a little difficult, but he wrote it himself. He changed it around a little bit here. It says that his wife was running off with a brave. His wife was cheating on him. She was going off with a brave named the Chickadee. So in order to keep her and to show his love for her, he stuck his nose in her mouth so she would bite it off. To prove his love. That's his thing. So whatever story you believe, one of them did happen because Pat knows was a real man. So from there he goes back to the house. He's running for the help. Mrs. Arnold, the one that lives there, is given him aid. And then from that day on, he wore a triangle piece of buckskin over his nose, tied to his ears. He became an outcast from the tribe, and he lived in a shack by the Oconto Spice Mill. That would be passed between police department and the bay at the pier. Breakwater, there you go, right out in that area. He did learn his lesson. He quit drinking and became an industrious man, a mighty hunter and a skilled woodscraft. He was well known in Oconto County, and he would ferry people across the river for 10 cents. That was his job. Boat. This next one takes place in multiple counties, multiple states. 1905, the cemeteries in Pound, Oconto, Stiles, Oconto Falls, Peshtigo, Lena, Jella, Green Valley, Birch Creek, and in Escanaba were vandalized terribly. They were coming, certain ones had every stone in the cemetery knocked up and put in a pile. The crosses were broken off them. And it was just a lot of vandals going on, and they couldn't catch who was doing it. Some of the articles in the paper, they thought it was a gang of 3 men demolished over 200 monuments in one cemetery. The next night, 50 miles away, it happened again. Another headline, Madmen on the Loose. It started at Pound, where crosses on the tombstones were hammered off. One of the stones was actually, had a picture of the cross engraved in the front, was carved out of it and chiseled up. Almost all the stones were marked in such a manner. The next night, in Oconto County, the destruction happened again. A lawyer by the name of D.G. Clausen from Oconto Falls, he gets into his office and finds a letter underneath the mailbox, or underneath the door. It says, we're looking for a lawyer because we're going to lynch this guy, or the guys, or whatever, because of the terrible things they've done against the Catholic Church. He didn't believe him, but he did put the article in the paper that said, please don't lynch him. The authorities in the northern counties watched for they were watching for mysterious strangers in carriages. They were also looking for religious cracks, and finally believed it was a secret society. And then there was a reward offered for the wholesale smashing of monuments. So this now ends up from Oconto County, now comes through this area, and it gets into Escanaba. 22 graves were left without monuments. They ripped the monuments from their spots and they piled them up. Most of the cemeteries in the area had armed guards. Had a fire going and guards at the night, and the guy was still getting away with it. When they come in the morning and realized all the damage was done. And from there it went to Gladstone. But in Escanaba, they did catch a gentleman. And they figured there's not a chance that he could get from Escanaba walking to Gladstone, so they let him go. The next day in Gladstone, they caught the same gentleman doing the damage. His name was Kazimir. He was from Hungary. And the first 3 months, he refused to say anything. They finally hypnotized him to get the information on why he did what he did. He had went to school, became a priest, a very good priest. Well, one day after becoming a priest, he met a young lady by the name of Marla Kazaveski, I believe. He told her that I'll leave the priesthood, I want to marry you. And she says, absolutely not, I won't marry a man that's not true to the church. The people in the church shunned him, kicked him out of the church. His dad kicked him out of his house. From there, he went to the United States, where he ended up in Pennsylvania. Couldn't hold on a job. His mind was just shot from what had happened. Somehow from Pennsylvania, he ended up in this area. He blamed all his troubles on the church, and he would ride underneath the trains. So as the trains were coming through Narrow Cemetery, he'd just roll up between the wheels, do the damage, wait for the next train, shimmy back underneath and ride the shafts underneath the trains. These are some of them. These are some of the pictures that I've taken. The ages match up to the time, so I'm sure these are ones that he did too. These were right outside of Oconto, north of Oconto, little cemetery, the Sweetown Cemetery. But the crosses were knocked off. Now the next story is just a fun one. There's another couple stones. You see the damage where it's broken here. (1932). A man by the name of Joseph Jika, he owned a store where they sold fruits. And he was robbed at night. On April 9th, he was robbed 12 to 15 suits valued about $280. The next day, one of the locals, David Truckee, brings in his suit and says, I need it altered, it doesn't fit me right. Well, he recognizes the suit from his sword. So he calls, he's pretty smart. He says, you come back tomorrow and I'll have everything ready for you. So when he gets there, the cops are waiting for him. It didn't take long to realize that Mr. Truckee was not the one that stole these suits. He said he gave $3 in cash and 4 gallons of gas to a man who needed to see his sick wife. He described the car. They started looking around, and sure enough, these 2 guys have been traveling all over doing the same thing, selling these suits, with the same excuse that he needed money to go see his wife. I think all except for one of the suits was found, anywhere from Stiles to Lena. But I just thought that was kind of cute. And that's just the ad I found about the same time. This takes place in Stiles. Whole different time. Well, we've changed a lot as a society. A band of Indians were traveling through Stiles. There was a chief and 10 to 12 squaws. Behind them on their horses was an aged Indian carrying a very sick child. And it was probably a funeral procession. They were probably taking them to Oconto to bury him. The child was very, very sick. Paper says it was a band of ruffians, which was a bunch of white guys. Took the aged man, ripped him from his horse, dragging him and the baby to the ground. The biggest thing I get out of this is this. This is what the newspaper said. We would not wonder that the Indians are such a rebellious people, and it's time the elements of the rowdiness should be suppressed. It also stated that what would have happened if one of the Indians would have come into Oconto or Peshtigo and done the same thing to a white person. How things have changed throughout the years. This takes place in the 1860s. At that time, the logging camps used oxen to make the roads through the woods when they were working. These oxen would be kept in Oconto in the summertime, and then when the ground was frozen, they would drive the oxen out to where they were working. And then every year they do the same thing. Well, one spring, the bullwhacker, which is the guy who was assigned to take care of the oxen, his name was Dallas Washburn. He started out at the logging camp near the west corner of Oconto County, where Pickerel Lake is now, something the other side of Suring, I would guess, in that area. He made it down to the river near the village of where Mountain is now. It was getting dark and he decided to make camp. So all there is him and the oxen out there. After feeding the cattle on himself, he was sitting by the fire. And he noticed that one of his oxen wandered away. He started calling it by name to get it to come back. And he heard this voice from the wilderness. He heard a woman say, "Don't be afraid, he won't go far." Now, there probably wasn't a house 25, 50 miles away. There was nothing in that area at this time. So to hear a voice out in the woods was rather shocking. He started to talk to her and realized that she didn't know her name, she didn't know where she was from, and he knew he had to get her out of the woods and take her back to Oconto. So the rest of the way he took her with him. Back in Oconto, she was temporarily jailed and given the name Crazy Jane. After diligently searching to find out where Jane come from, there was never no answer. She was found to be insane, but harmless. She was put to work as a servant girl in Oconto and given the freedom to go wherever she wanted. In August 25th, 1877, this is an article that was written in the paper about her. We wish to draw attention to the proper authorities to the shameful neglect of duty in allowing a crazy female to run at large in our streets. She surely ought to be placed under proper restraints and not be permitted to run about as a target for street crabs to shoot at and low-life men to entice into saloons, where she is made much worse by whiskey, which they prevail upon her to drink. A man guilty of such an act is not worthy to mingle in a society of hogs, yet we have them in this community. Once again, I like the reporter. She lived in Oconto for a number of years, lived in the jail, did cleaning, wandered the streets. And a few years later, she disappeared again. They assumed that she just went back off the woods someplace. They looked for her, never found her. And the next spring, one of the trappers was out in the marsh, and they found her body. They figured she froze to death. To this day, no one still knows who she was. Shaggy Phantom Hermit. This one I remember. I was probably, I don't think I was in high school yet. And I can remember friends of mine saying they went snowmobiling up north. And some monk, they called him a monk, all dressed in white, ran across the snowmobile trail. And then someone else says, well, my family's seen that guy too. And different people had seen this guy. His name was Howard Fairfield. He was 36 from Milwaukee. He had a wife and 6 children. But then he also had bills. And it was getting to him that he couldn't afford his bills. So he come up with this really great idea. I'll just leave my wife, I'll leave my children, I'll go to Oconto County, and I'll live in a cave. I'll make myself a cave, and that's where I'll be good. So he moved into an 8-foot by 20-foot cave he made in the side of a hill. He then survived by hunting and stealing from cabins in the 3 counties. At times he'd stay in the cabins until the owner would come out. And then he'd just jump out the window and take off in the woods. In the wintertime, he always wore white because if he jumped in the snowbank, you wouldn't see him. And I can't tell by the video, he's a short little fellow. I can remember watching it on the news. Sheriff departments in 3 counties had used dozens of deputies equipped with snowmobiles, aircraft, bloodhounds, and attempted to capture the family. It took 5 months of searching before they found him. Deputies on snowmobiles tracked down the Phantom. He was asleep in his cave. Some of the headlines here. They took over a truckload of stuff out of his cabin. He only stole what was needed. Oh, once in a while he'd steal a little whiskey or beer. But he had a gas stove in there that he took from a cabin. He had guns, different shells. And I want to say he wasn't the only one that did this, because in the 20s there was another gentleman that did that. He was a farmer that they considered insane, so they were going to put him away. And he took off and hid out in the woods. When they found him years later, he had a gun that shot 6 different types of bullets that he modified himself. So when he'd steal bullets, he just modified the gun to make them fire. I think the guy was probably not insane. I think he knew what he was doing. When Fairfield was arrested, he pretty much thanked him. He said, "I'm glad it's over. This is not the best life for me to be out there." He admits that the bloodhounds were so close that he jumped into Boulder Lake, staying underwater until they left. He could watch them. That's how close they were at one point. There's a picture of his cave, the gas stove that he stole, some of his stuff. Like I said, he only stole what he needed. They captured him. Then in 1972, he escaped again from jail. And he did the same thing. But this time he did it in the spring of the year. It wasn't prepared. Because about a month and a half later, he surrendered. He couldn't handle the mosquitoes. he said it wasn't the same the first time he went in. Everything was frozen. Then he was already protected. But I remember when he came up, the second time he surrendered himself. He couldn't handle the mosquitoes. Where are we getting here? That's where he escaped here, hermit gone from prison. 1906, field trip from Oconto. The freshman class from Oconto went to Oconto Falls to see the dam. There's a little bridge that goes across the dam, and the bridge wasn't strong enough for a lot of people. It wasn't made for weight. So when they got there, they arrived there at 10:45, 50 kids. Got there by train. At 1 o'clock, the class lined up and were told that the bridge was not strong enough for them all to go across. So half the class went over. They crossed the bridge, did the tour of the water, the factory, checked it out. And then they came back, everything went smooth. Second group crosses the bridge. They go over, check it out, everything's doing really good. But at this time, when they're coming back, the first group was so excited, they ran out the bridge to meet them. And they met halfway. Way too much weight for the bridge, and it gave away. The Falls Manufacturing Company footbridge collapsed. Professor Newcomb and nearly 49 students fell 38 feet to the water in the rocks below. One of the articles states, "We wish to state that we have never seen such a courageous lot of children or persons more self-sacrificing, young or old, of either sex. The ordeal through which they passed was one worse than the souls of veteran warriors." As the news got out, the people along the banks just started running to the water, looking for kids. They were grabbing them in, pulling them to the motel, pulling them into their house, wherever they could get them, getting them out of the water. Ella Tenke was carried over the Little Falls. A gentleman by the name of James Morrissey saw the unconscious girl floating down the river, and several times trying to get her out, was not able to get her out of the water. Further on, he sees her floating in the water. So he takes off again and tries several more times. He finally grabbed her, pulled her out of the water, and did the most brightest thing. This is for all you gentlemen. He had this great idea. I'll bring him home to my wife. My wife knows what to do. He grabs her like a sack of potatoes, picks her up, throws her over his shoulders, and as her breast hit his shoulders, with such force, the water shot out of her lungs, and they figured that's what saved her life. And he brought him to the house. Once again, it was a special train came and brought doctors and family and anybody else from Oconto, was out to Oconto Falls to help. A young man by the name of John Bestenheimer, he was killed. The next morning, Vida Fency, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing these names wrong, died the next morning. Hazel Denchen was had internal injuries. Frank Dunleavy, which is one of my relatives, had a broken leg, broken arm, and bad cuts to his head. And Laura Cecil had a collarbone sprain. Now the kids at school, they put a motto on the window. And that motto, they looked at it every day because it took a couple months for the last two kids to come back to class. And every day they looked at that motto, and that kept them going. And I'll tell you what the motto is in a little bit here. They say they remember, I read this in the yearbook, the day Jane Wright was hauled back to school on her sled. That was a highlight of the year to see the young lady come back. And the day Frank Dunleavy walked in during the literacy program, he was walking. This is the motto that was put on the window of the school. Psalms 23:4. Yea, I walk through the shadow of the valley of death. I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me, and thy rod and staff will comfort me. I wonder if it passed nowadays. That's what kept them going. And I'm going to end up here a little bit here. KKK in Oconto Falls. Very difficult to find any information because it's all been censored. If you notice, that they're not having a party. Those are gift baskets they're going to give to families. They burn a cross in someone's yard on Saturday and Sunday morning, bring them over food. The leader in one of these has chicken feet out of it. That's a full stinking chicken. It's got the little feet sticking on that basket. The leader, he embezzled all their money. He went to Milwaukee and bought a gas station. And that was pretty much the end of the KKK in Oconto Falls. They also, they wore their hoods so no one could see them. But the local shoemaker made all their shoes. So he knew every name of every one of them. I could give you more information, but the guy that told me, he says, let's keep it, while I'm alive, keep it quiet. Kind of, you know. He wasn't part of it, but his dad knew what was going on. There's another, this is the German Lutheran Church. Once again, one man up there on a ladder, fighting those fires. I think that's the last one I got. But the biggest thing is, things happen. I've looked, getting ready, I want to do this again. And I'll give you a little hint. There was a doctor in 1906 in Surrey that had a wife in another state. But he fell in love with this girl in Surrey and married her at the same time. He was there for a couple of years. He left, and when he was gone, his brother and father found out what was going on, so he murdered them and then lit the house on fire. He killed 2 of his wives because he had many of them married at different times. He was put to death, and I found an article that said he was the one that was in one of the Wright brothers' soccer team, maybe? It was one sports teams. And he clobbered one of the Wright brothers when he was in sports, mangling his face so bad that the kid decided not to go to college. Changed his life around completely. We all know what he did. He invented the airplanes. But he was the one that did the damage to his face. So next time you get to hear the rest of that story. And also, I gotta read that letter. Okay, this is from Patch Nose. There was an article about who was the oldest Oconto County resident. So he gets an article in the newspaper. Mr. Editor, me come first to Oconto. Me go to Peshtigo for 50 winters. Sometime by and by ago, heap wigwams, heap muskrats there. Ugh, no whiskey, no good. Then he said something about Kamawashkin. I don't know what that means. Me come then to Oconto, make wigwam, or bridges now. Heap muskrats. Ugh, heap fun. Heap fast boosters. No house, no white man, no whiskey, no white man come for 15 years. My chickadee, he come, he make darn fuss. No squaw, he take my squaw. Not much. Me stick nose in her squaw's mouth to make him stay with me. Squaw eat up my nose. Me a good Injun. Make no fight, don't want to fuss. Let squaw have my nose. Me got patch to make nose. Another word that I don't understand. Something about something bully. People, the Indians bullied them, the white man bullied them at first too. They call me Patch Nose. Me have 25 papooses, most heap damn white. So some of you may have be one of the relatives of this gentleman. He's not quite sure, but at least he had 25 and he knows a bunch of them are white. Can't always tell, he says. They're bad boys. And when me come to Oconto River, only trout brook. Me first settler, me a good Indian, member of the church now, heap prayers, heap whiskey, heap muskrats, heap hell have a good time. Best I can do with reading that letter. And if you want to know, most of the articles I come through is from the Oconto newspaper site. All the newspapers are online, it's free. Well, I can't say all of them online as people pay for newspapers to put online. You get in there, you look up one word. If you're looking up blacksmith shop, every article that says blacksmith shop is going to be in there. If you look up your last name, I looked up Merline and there's just tons and tons of stuff in there. We put a whole book together with that stuff on it. And it's interesting, it covers this area too. So that's what I got.
Thank you very much.